All right, we are live. We are talking about all things functional medicine, all things whole life wellness, and our plan tonight is to talk about the energy node of the functional medicine matrix. We're using lavalier mics tonight. Last time we did that, nobody could hear us. So if you can't hear us,
please let us know.
Please let us know. So I'm Dr. Sult. I'm a medical doctor and functional medicine practitioner.
I'm Elizabeth, a registered nurse and life coach.
So, energy, important?
Energy is important if we want to be able to do anything throughout our day.
Anything throughout our day or anything biochemical in our body, move a muscle, do anything at all. So, we're going to talk everything from biochemistry. Hopefully I'll simple it a little bit and make it sort of understandable. And we're also going to talk about diet and lifestyle and how that works. So the energy node of the functional medicine matrix is really mostly about mitochondria. Mitochondria are these little tiny things inside your cells, and they convert your food into energy. And how efficiently you do that has something to do with how well everything else in life goes. Your brain uses a ton of energy. Something like 25% of all the energy in your body goes to your brain.
And I think that's where we start to notice it first. If you notice that your brain function isn't quite optimal, that's a good hint that maybe you're not creating the right amount of energy that you need, or eating the right things to give you the right amount of energy to keep your brain going.
So I notice there's a couple people watching. If you can hear us, please say, yep, I can hear you. We're using lavaliers. Last time we tried to do this with an iPhone, it didn't work on Facebook for some reason. So please let us know. So back to energy. I just noticed that there were a few people watching, so I wanted to say that again.
Yeah.
So these mitochondria, they convert your food into energy, and she was just telling us that your brain is really sensitive to that, so it's often a place, almost everybody with chronic illness talks about brain fog, or they talk about memory loss, or just not being as sharp as they used to be, all those kinds of things. And so energy and the energy module, oh great.
Thank you, Amber.
Energy and the energy module is super important, but all of the modules, all of the nodes on the functional medicine matrix are intertwined. They all work together, and they all are supported by the 5 fundamental lifestyle factors that we did a whole series on last week. So that's really the place you start, and then the rest of the nodes of the functional medicine matrix are, how do you fine tune it to be exactly for you. So anyway, these mitochondria, they turn your food into energy, and it's all done through a process called, hi Mandy.
Hi Mandy.
Through a process called glycolysis and the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Hey Brian.
Hi Brian.
I'm talking just to you right now. And all of that biochemistry boils down to this. There are certain nutrients that are important. The various parts of the electron transport chain, you need carnitine to get fat into your mitochondria, you need coenzyme Q10 and lipoic acid and various B vitamins and magnesium and other nutrients to make it all work well. But all of that's kind of transparent to us, right? We don't feel our mitochondria working. We just know when we don't feel good. And so like we said, the brain is really sensitive to it, but just our state of energy. I mean, there are a lot of things that can affect your energy, your mood, and, all kinds of different things. But so mitochondria-wise, we typically recommend a Renew diet. Can you tell us a little bit about what a Renew diet really is?
A Renew diet is a diet that eliminates a lot of those common foods that cause inflammation. It also helps encourage your natural detoxification processes, so it helps you to detoxify better. It also rids you of those things that kind of cause those common food triggers. So there's no processed sugars in it. It removes grains, all dairy. It's a very focused whole foods diet, foods containing low glycemic index as well. So there's certain substitutions that you can use instead of grains and flours, but they're all very low glycemic index. And even in the terms of fruit, it's even limited on the amount of fruit that you consume while you're on the diet.
A bunch of years ago, I mean, I'm talking 25 years ago or something, there used to be this great program called Nutri-Circles, like nutrition circles. And it was a way of calculating what was in a food or what was in a diet. And I did a ton of calculations, and I figured out that if you erase, remember the old pyramid, and the grains were at the bottom and fats were at the top? And if you erase the bottom and took all of the calories that you would have used in grains and put them up into fruits and vegetables, you something like doubled the nutritional density of your diet. So basically that's what this diet does. It's a low glycemic index, whole foods, low grain kind of diet. And the reason you want to do that is because the place in your body where you make the most free radicals, the most oxidative stress, is in your mitochondria. And so you want tons of phytonutrients to protect your mitochondria so that you don't just leak out all these extra electrons, all this oxidative stress, and cause damage to your cells. And unfortunately, with the standard American diet, abbreviated SAD, we often are insufficient with regard to many nutrients, magnesium one, fiber another, antioxidants commonly are deficient. And by increasing your fruits and vegetables, you can increase your phytonutrients and your other antioxidants. So that's really important for the mitochondria and for energy production. But what the mitochondria do is the end product is something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And think of adenosine triphosphate like the basic currency of energy in your body. Every chemical reaction in your body requires enzymes, and it requires ATP. And ATP is like the little spark that makes things happen in your body. And if you have, if for instance, you mentioned detoxification, if you have excess lead or mercury or cadmium, it poisons your mitochondria. And not to the point where a toxicologist would say, oh, you're poisoned, but it's a 1-for-1 kind of ratio. A little bit is a little bit bad, more is a little more bad, and so on. But if you have enough to start to decrease the efficiency of your mitochondria, instead of so we talk about moles of sugar making moles of ATP, and 1 mole, which is just a way of measuring chemical, 1 mole of sugar makes 21 moles of ATP if everything's humming the way it's supposed to be. And if it isn't, maybe you're making 20 or 19 or 18 or 17 or 15. And if you're making less, then your body is just more stressed. And it's a kind of circling the drain problem, because if you can't make ATP, now you can't detoxify as well. If you can't detoxify as well, you get more toxic. If you're more toxic, you can't make ATP as well. And it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you're down in the drain. And that's why a lot of people with chronic illness, they get the brain fog and the fatigue and the muscle pain and all that stuff, and they can't get out of it because they just got stuck in this spiral. And we have to intervene in ways to make that happen.
And
Hi, Scott. And
spiral takes a long time. It's not just one insult, it's many insults over a period of time. And all of a sudden you look back and you realize you've just kind of dwindled down to this. So once you're at that state, logically it takes time to rebuild yourself and go back up to the state. And, a lot of times people, when they suffer from chronic illness, or they're down at the bottom of that windy road, and, they find themselves looking up, and how do I get energy? I have no energy to go out and do things. People say, well, just start exercising, you'll have more energy. But you get to the point
It makes
where
you
you
worse.
can't exercise. Yes, and it physically makes you worse. You physically have symptoms that come out of trying to exercise, and then you perhaps get sick. So you have chronic reinfections because you're trying to push yourself when really you just need to nurture yourself. You need to pull back, do that Renew diet for a good 6 weeks, and it's just a wonderful reset.
Yeah, most illnesses are, most things, if you're active, you feel better, right? But things like chronic fatigue, or we call them mitochondropathies, or mitochondropathies, that would be specific to muscles. Myo means muscle. Anyway, if you have these mitochondrialopathies, exercise actually makes you feel worse. So that's sort of one of the key issues. And brain fog, often, but you can get brain fog from just being depressed. So it's not always a mitochondrial issue, but often in chronic disease it is. And people with chronic disease know that, everybody says, just eat better and get out and be active and you'll feel good. I feel good when I'm active. Well, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And you need to resuscitate your mitochondria, get detoxified, do all these other things that are necessary for the mitochondria to work better.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously, I think, the diet is the first place, the number one place to start. But what would you recommend for, clients that want to add something to the diet to maybe give themselves a little boost in that period where they're trying to rebuild? Is there a specific few supplements that you recommend?
Yep. Let's see. Hi, Robert. And yeah, there are. And so we want to go last week we went over the 5 modifiable lifestyle things, right? So sleep is really important. So what can you do to help yourself sleep? Well, all of the things we talked about in that video, including, a good night's rest starts shortly after you wake up, and managing stress all day long and all that stuff. But then melatonin can help. You may not be able to, the next modifiable lifestyle thing is you may not be able to exercise like crazy, but some movement, go for a walk. Just get your blood circulating, get some sunlight on your face early in the morning to stimulate melatonin. And then nutrition-wise, well, we already talked about the Renew diet, melatonin we talked about, coenzyme Q10 I talked about. In really tough cases, I'll use lots of coenzyme Q10. Maybe I start with 100 milligrams a day, but I'll go up to 200 2 or 3 times a day without really blinking. And then if other testing suggests it, maybe even higher. Lipoic acid, a couple hundred milligrams to a couple of hundred milligrams 2 or 3 times a day. Something called PQQ. That's a really giant, long mouthful name. If any of you can spell that, write it out and we'll send you something free. No looking it up on Google, though. Anyway, PQQ, 20 milligrams a day. PQQ is another antioxidant. It's also used in that electron transport chain in mitochondria. And it stimulates your genes to actually make more mitochondria. So PQQ is really important. Then I talked about magnesium, manganese, selenium, zinc, and then a complement of B vitamins are necessary. So, basically your mega dose multivitamin plus extra Q, PQQ, coenzyme Q10, and lipoic acid, and then just for good measure, because it's really important for the membranes, the cellular membranes that are really important in the mitochondria. Healthy oils, particularly fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids, omega-9s, which is olive oil, primrose, which is omega-6. Those are the nutrients. And then moving on to the next thing in that basement of nutritional or lifestyle things is stress management. So we talked about stress management last week as part of the thing, but if you're really having a hard time with stress, some of the things that we recommend for stress management, in addition to being active, meditating, and as we talked about in that video, not just, meditation isn't just sitting on a mountaintop. It's also movement. It can be dance. It can be art. There's a lot of meditative things that you can do, but there are also some supplements. So L-theanine is one that I like a lot, and that's probably 200 milligrams, certainly towards the evening, but in people who are having a lot of angst and anxiety, like maybe happening right now because of COVID and so on, you might want to use L-theanine, 200 milligrams 3 times a day. You might want to use some L-tryptophan during the day to help increase your serotonin levels. There are many other herbs and so on that can help with stress management. Ginseng is a very good adaptogen. And then relationships. That's another one of the 5 modifiable lifestyle factors, and relationships can be very important to how you manage energy and what your stress level is and all that stuff. And so reading in some books like what's the wilderness book we talked about, Brene?
Braving the Wilderness.
I knew there was something about brave and wilderness. I just couldn't put it together. Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. And can you tell us my favorite quote that I can never remember about conversations?
Yes. We have many conversations throughout the day, and a few of those involve other people.
Yeah. A few of those.
So most are with ourselves.
Yeah, most of them. And if you think about it, there's a lot of noise going on in there. And this symbol means you're crazy for a reason, right? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in there.
So the goal is to slow down the wheel.
Yeah.
Slow it down or stop it. You know, meditation is just stopping it. So whatever you can do to get it to stop for a bit.
Yep. And so what I'm trying to do here is illustrate that while we can dive deep in all these different modules. There's assimilation, which we did a whole bunch on the 5R program, and you can go look that up on our YouTube channel, which is Just Be Well. We did a whole ton on the immune system, and we talked extensively about the 5 modifiable lifestyles last week. We're doing energy this week, and these are all things you can dive really deep in as an individual, but it all starts with those 5 modifiable lifestyles, and that's why I keep going back to those and sort of picking out things from those areas that are good for this particular module, so energy. So, that's energy. What kind of questions are out there, if any, about functional medicine in general, about, our channel Just Be Well and whole life wellness, or energy in particular? So the muscles, you normally think about muscles and I'm tired and my muscles are tired, but it's obviously so much more than that. The ache and pain of fibromyalgia is, in my opinion, very significantly related to mitochondria. The fatigue of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue related to mitochondria, brain fog related to mitochondria. People who have significant problems with chemical sensitivities, whether it's real diagnosed multiple chemical sensitivity, or if it's just, gosh, I can't stand the soap aisle at the grocery store, often mitochondrial. And doing a mitochondrial resuscitation can be very helpful for these people. In fact, you can do all the allergy testing and get them off of all the allergens and yada, yada, yada. And what we find is allergies are usually a consequence, not a cause. In other words, because you have dysbiosis and leaky gut and poor energy production, so you can't fix it, you end up with lots of allergies. So just one layer there. You're going to have to read that with your better eyes.
Hello, Bridget. And then Kristen, thank you for that comment that the meditation is whatever slows down or stops unnecessary chatter. Yes.
Yep.
So true.
Yeah. And there's, I do several different meditations, and they used to call me dizzy on the cross-country team in high school because I would run right past the high school sometimes. I would just get into the zone. I was aware of my surroundings, but I wasn't thinking about them. I'd just keep going. Everybody'd make fun of me. Wrong way. They'd call me wrong way. All kinds of, how high school is. You get all kinds of names in high school.
For me, music can be very meditative because
just get lost in it.
Yeah, you get, especially if I pick, music that's more of a calming nature. I can definitely get lost in it, and it stops sometimes those compulsive thoughts that I can't slow down.
We do kind of we're also involved in something called holotropic breath work. And that is far from what you'd think of as meditative music. It's usually very evocative music, very heavy duty drumming, heavy duty, if you think about sort of shamanic kind of drumming and just dun 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 dun. And it's almost like a sensory deprivation, because all that sound and the sort of noise makes the rest of the world go away, and then your breathing technique that you're using is really very deep stuff, and a lot of explorative. I guess I'll use that word, explorative. It was created by a guy who was an LSD researcher, a legal LSD researcher back in the 60s and 70s, and when they outlawed LSD, he had to find another way to get people to have hallucinations, and that this grew out of that. It's not that we do it to hallucinate, but we do it for self-exploration. So it's a really good technique, holotropic breath, if you're interested in looking it up on the internet.
Selena, I think I'm going to start the Renew diet very soon. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should all start it together.
That's not a bad idea at all.
I've been thinking that we need to do that again as well.
So everything's a challenge. I don't want to do a challenge. I want to do, instead of the challenge, I want to do let's do the Renew Diet Support Group. Instead of the challenge. It's like only in America do you have power yoga. Or I don't know, just superhuman meditation, or just goofy stuff, or we have everything kind of backwards, in my opinion. It's like, let's make it about supporting each other instead of competition all the time.
Yeah. All
right, so that's the energy module. What else is Selena saying here?
Is that similar to sound bathing?
I would say it's a cousin. Yeah, it's a cousin. Sound bathing is just sort of, yeah, wonderful. And just sort of, using that sound to immerse yourself in that sound, make that sound a cocoon, almost like, a sensory deprivation tank, which is tepid, very salty water, so that you float really well. And so there's like no sensation. Sound bathing is like that. Just with sound instead of with floating. So yeah, it's very similar.
Oh, similar to this drumming music you were talking about. I would say that it's at least the sound bathing that I've done compared to, maybe there's a part of it where it would be in there, but it kind of almost takes a storyline. The holotropic breath work.
Yeah, they start out with some really kind of mellow, get you kind of relaxed, and then the beat comes in and gets harder and harder, and then there's sort of a crescendo of the beat and everything, and that happens at about 2.5 hours, 2 hours, something like that. So this is a long process, and then it kind of comes down, and then it sort of ends with nature sounds to sort of bring you back into the world without, it's fun stuff. It's good stuff. All right. Energy. What else about energy, or what else about anything?
Bridget said, love floating tank.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to just, I was going to say check out. It's not checking out. It's checking in. It's good to check in once in a while.
Check in.
Yeah. Check in
Inward.
with yourself.
Yeah. And not just inward, like inward.
Yeah, and I sometimes like to say check out, because I actually think it's sometimes it's not really about inward, it's about the rest of the universe, the rest of, a connection to all things kind of idea, which is really often the goal of meditation, the goal of Zen, the goal of yoga is sort of to feel a connection to everything. You've done floating, was pain-free for 3 days. Boy, why don't you do that every 2.5 days then? Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah, it is. All right, and how does that relate to your energy pathway? Well, it all relates back, because they're all interrelated. And if you're managing your stress better, you're managing your gut lining and your microbiome better, and it just all falls together. And when you get those nutrients into your system, and when you have fewer stress hormones circulating, your mitochondria just work better.
Bridget said, I fell asleep.
Yeah. I was at so there's holding space, and then there's traveling, they call it, or sitting and traveling when you're doing holotropic breath. And I was sitting for somebody, and they fell asleep. They were snoring like crazy, and I called over one of the big instructors, and said, he told me he was going to fall asleep and he wanted me to wake him up, but I don't really want to wake him up. What do you think? And she said, if he's sleeping, he's like probably the best sleep he's had in 20 years. Leave him alone. And that's right. Sometimes that's the best sleep you'll ever have. Yeah. Oh, Selena's talking to Bridget now. I have an appointment.
I have an appointment for
when the quarantine. I couldn't read the word quarantine. I was trying aquarium, when the aquarium is over. What are you talking about? Yeah, when the quarantine is over. Well, we all have a lot of plans for that, don't we? I think my plan is to just go someplace where there's other people. I don't even care where. Just other human beings.
Yeah.
Look around.
Yep. That's the great part of going out for a walk every day. It's like, oh, are we going to see another human?
Yeah. Usually hold our breath as we walk by and smile and wave.
Yeah, make sure you're 6 feet away. But
yeah.
It's nice to know there's other people still out there.
Yeah, great. It is nice to know, because sometimes you kind of wonder, did the aliens come and extinguish the human race and they just missed us? But it turns out they're all still out there. We're just working hard to save our communities. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. We're not staying at home because we're selfish and we don't want to get sick. Now, obviously, I don't want to get sick. That's true. But it's also true that I don't want to make others sick. And we are contagious for anywhere from 1 to 5 or even 8 days before we get sick. And of course, there's always that day or two when you're thinking, gosh, am I getting sick? And then it turns out that you're contagious for maybe a few days after your symptoms are gone. So that's why they're now saying, by the way, everybody should be wearing a mask all the time. It's still true that the mask is not to protect you. The mask is to protect others.
Yeah.
But it turns out, because there are so many asymptomatic carriers, that wearing a mask all the time is protecting everyone around you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Jane.
Bridget, could you repeat the times you are going live again?
So we've settled on 8:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. We're going to be live, and we're going to be talking about the functional medicine matrix and all the nodes. So we did a whole thing on the modifiable lifestyle factors last week. We've already done a lot on GI with the 5R and all that stuff. We did a lot on immune, and we have a whole deal on immunity. In fact, I'll post the immunity whole life immune support program that we have, which you can get if you want. And then today was energy, and then we'll choose another one tomorrow. Probably it'll be detox, I would think. And then we'll do hormones and communicate, which is communication, and we'll do transport and structure, and then we'll go into the mental, emotional, spiritual, not necessarily in this order. Maybe we'll do emotional tomorrow, who knows. And then we'll do antecedents, triggers, and mediators. And so we'll just kind of roll through the whole thing, because during this time, getting all of that stuff humming well is what makes your whole system works better, which is what makes you more resilient to everything, not just COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
Lisa, do you feel like this quarantine time is okay? It makes us slow down and take this time to renew ourselves. I think we can definitely use it for a positive impact on everything. It's positive on the people around us that maybe we are keeping ourselves from, to protect them, and then we can definitely zone in and work on things that we've been wanting to work on.
There's less air pollution. There's less water pollution.
Yeah.
The canals of Venice are running clear for the first time in decades. The air in Beijing is not polluted for the first time in decades. So there's tons of beautiful things that are happening around us. Hopefully, we're finding ways to bond more closely with our housemates and not be on the verge of murdering each other.
Or leaving.
I saw a post the other day and it said, all you single people out there, don't worry. When this is all over, there'll be lots more single people. Hopefully that's not the case, hopefully. But apparently it was true in China. After the
I bet.
curfew was lifted, there were lots and lots of divorces. So try maybe Braving the Wilderness, or the 5 Love Languages, or the 4 Agreements, all books we talked about under relationships, the video about relationships. So think about looking at some of those books and maybe using this time to try to bolster and strengthen your relationship rather than finding it being torn apart.
Lisa, I agree. And hello, Jane, and hello, Sherry.
Yep.
So yeah, any more questions that anyone has, or are we going to ask me something?
I was going to ask you, have we been here 10 minutes or 45 minutes? I don't even know.
I'm supposed to be keeping track of time. We have been here 32 minutes, so I suppose it's time to let you guys go unless you have any other questions.
Yep, happy to stay if you have questions,
Yeah.
but also don't want to just drone on about stuff we've already talked about. So
We'll be back tomorrow to talk more, so if you have something that comes up, you can always write it down and ask us tomorrow. We'd love to answer it for you.
Yep. All righty. We will see you tomorrow. See if I can make this button work on the first try.
Bye.
Bye.